Our next legendary lord for the Curse of the Vampire Coast has been revealed, Count Noctilus. And depending on when you're actually watching this video, Aranessa's Saltspite, or whatever the next lord or lady, will be revealed as well. So today in this video, what I want to talk about is the history, the lore of Dreadfleet, and then extend that further into the history and lore of Count Noctilus. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this video, we're going to talk about that history, talk about that lore, and then we're going to segue into the bit that was released on the Total War Academy page that goes over the new abilities, the faction effects of Count Noctilus. And we'll do the same exact thing for Aranessa's Saltspite when it's revealed. I had debated whether or not to put these two videos together, but I think that rather than me speculating on what her abilities are going to be based off of absolutely nothing, because there's no actual tabletop abilities for her, I think it makes a lot of sense to actually do this when she comes out. And again, I'm hedging my bets, 99% that it's her, by looking at that that little cutout. Now, let's talk about Dreadfleet. I mean, because we can't talk about Noctilus without talking about Dreadfleet, because a lot of the faction effects, a lot of the special abilities, a lot of even the items of Noctilus give a very heavy nod to that Dreadfleet kind of origin. So what the hell is a Dreadfleet? I mean, obviously, yeah, like, it's a really cool pirate game. It came out in like 2011. It was not a very resounding success in the Games Workshop repertoire. In fact, they pulled it off the shelves very, very quickly. It went from release to full level shelved in a matter of months. So the story of Dreadfleet essentially goes, you start with a prominent character named Jaego Roth. Jaego Roth. I'll flash his picture up here for you. And he was this kind of very infamous privateer. And all this deals with pirate lords, privateers, all that kind of action. And he essentially led a very small little raiding vessel, the Night Watch, and was a very prominent pirate in his time. And eventually he kind of said, well, you know what, I'm ready to hang up my very ornate, huge hat with my very weird, big, huge white beard and retire with my children, or my child and my wife, back in Sartosa. Now, here's where things get a little dicey for him. When Roth comes back to Sartosa, he sees the entire city up in flames. It has just been raided by Count Noctilus himself. And Count Noctilus at this time is regarded as a legend. He's not regarded as a fact. He's like, oh shit, a vampire lord on the seven seas? Not again. And this incenses Roth. He's like, okay, I've got to get revenge. I've got to do something about this. I have to go petition the Empire. And he retreats to the Empire, the Cult of Sigmar mainly, and is like, hey, you know, we need aid to fight Count Noctilus. He's raiding through all the ocean here, the Great Ocean, and destroying everything. And the Empire's like, listen, man, we don't really have time for this. We're too embroiled in our own conflicts here on land to worry about what's going on over in the New World / that area. So essentially, he gets curbed. And Jaego Roth is like, well, I have to do something about this. So he steals the Grand Theogonist's warship, the Heldenhammer, and basically kind of starts his own fleet, what's called the Grand Alliance. He makes his first stop over to Xandri and steals a ton of gold. And that's not a really good thing, because King Amenhotep, which is one of the fleet masters of Xandri, decides to ally against him. So Jaego Roth, before he departs to the Empire, of course, he grabs a number of artifacts that his dad is kind of like harboring after the raid. And one of them is a moon dial. There's a great seashell, and that seashell's got like a sea chart of basically where the maelstrom is that Noctilus is hiding. And then an Arabian spyglass that basically gives him free passage to that said location. Now, that moon dial is important, so just keep that on the very back of your mind. It's not going to pay any importance to the rest of the story, but keep that in mind. So, Jaego Roth assembles the Grand Alliance, is what it's called. It's these 5 vessels with their 5 corresponding captains. The Heldenhammer, captained by, of course, Jaego Roth. The Swordfish, as we've talked about, which is captained by Aranessa's Saltspite. Now, she wasn't born with any normal legs, and I mean, she's not really undead. So we have to really see how she fits into this Vampire Coast kind of story or lore, but we'll see how that goes. The Flaming Scimitar, which is commanded by the Golden Magus. Aranis Assaultspite and the Golden Magus are the first two to join the Grand Alliance. And in their pursuit into the Maelstrom to find Count Noctilus, they eventually find Red Brock Gunnarsson, who is the captain of Grimnir's Thunder. And they kind of bring him back and to the sea hold of Barak Var and set out with him as their fourth. And in their pursuit out with all four of them, they then come across the Sea Drake. And that's captained by Prince Irelian. Now, cool thing about Prince Irelian is a very little kind of weird tidbit from the lore here is he's actually Finubar's son, who's the current Phoenix King of Ulthuan. So that's kind of a nice little side fact for you guys here. But the 5 of these ships set out against the Dreadfleet. And the Dreadfleet is comprised of the Bloody Reaver, which is, of course, Count Noctilus's ship. Scabrous, which is the Skaven ship of Skretch Half-Dead, which is so cool. I mean, what if he was the fourth lord, right? Like half dead, like a hybrid vampire Skaven lord would be really, really cool. The Curse of Xandri, which is the captained by King Amenhotep from Xandri itself, the Tomb King, and the Black Kraken captained by Tordrek Hackheart, a Chaos Dwarf, no less. And then Shadewraith, we talked about Shadewraith, which is the Ghost Captain Vangeist, is the leader of that ethereal ship that kind of flies on the seven, or the seas, the ocean. Each one of these ships has a very specific thing. And for instance, Red Brock, the dwarves have bonuses fighting against each other. The elf ship has bolts versus cannons, which actually have different piercing effects. The Shadewraith, since it flies, it's hard to hit, but if it does take a hit, it can really just get destroyed. The Bloody Reaver can regenerate. So all these things have the Swordfish is really good at ramming and really good at hand-to-hand combat. So every single one of these things has got a certain attribute. A Helden Hammer can take a lot of hits, stuff like that. So that essentially is Dreadfleet in its entirety. What eventually happens is the Grand Alliance gets into the Maelstrom, and all 5 of the lords kind of not convene, but surround Noctilus, and Jago Roth sacrifices himself to kill Captain Noctilus. So that's what happens in the story, in the lore, and that's all very important for what we talk about. The Noctilus that we're going to see in Curse of the Vampire Coast. But what I want to read from now is the Dreadfleet book and what it talks about for Count Noctilus. He's got a very specific set of lore, just like we see in any of the other 8th edition books or anything like that. So we're going to read that lore blurb here right now for you. The tale of the Dreadfleet began in a remote castle at the heart of Sylvania, a landlocked region in the east of the Old World. Cursed and desolate, Sylvania has long lingered under the specter of undeath. It is the province of the von Karsteins, an aristocratic dynasty of the dead, who have spread the curse of vampirism across the empire for time immemorial. The blood-stained dynasty of the von Karsteins has always been driven by a lust for power. At the heart of their dangerous megalomania is an ambition to master the art of necromancy and use it to drive the world to its knees. Yet none have been successful for long. The von Karsteins have ever been thwarted at the last by the efforts of man, or even by their own devious nature, for they constantly vie amongst themselves for supremacy. Niklaus von Karstein, known to seafarers only as Count Noctilus, was a creature possessed of a different vision. Tired of the infighting of his peers, Niklaus sought a new route to power. Within the dusty tomes of necromancy and sorcery, he found a great many charts that mapped the ebb and flow of magic across the world. In a moment of revelation, Niklaus realized that if he could master the art of seafaring, he could be able to harness the gales of magic that whirl and cascade around the oceans. Amongst the charts, Niklaus found indications of a maelstrom that festered in the distant heart of the ocean. This skull-strewn vortex was a tempest of magic that drew the dead unto itself like a giant lodestone. Here was the power of Niklaus needed. He studied the vortex with an intensity only an immortal could muster, conducting experiments and modifying his theories until he understood the nature and form of this strange tempest. Amassing every scrap of arcane knowledge he could find, Niklaus von Karstein became a master in the art of translocation, an aspect of shadow magic, as the men of Empire call it. Better yet, Niklaus learned that with enough power he could translocate not only himself and his minions, but even the substance of the land itself. Upon one dark and loathsome Geheimnisnacht, Niklaus prepared a great ritual from the heart of his beloved castle. He raised 1,200 of the dead from their makeshift graves, and each one of the corpses had a mortal personally slain in his lifespan. With a titanic effort of will, he set them to shambling around his castle in a monstrous, convoluted spiral that coincided precisely with the flow of the vortex that haunted the great ocean. He summoned a great host of spirits, hordes of blood-sucking fellbats, sending them whirling through the skies in intricate patterns. Finally, as Noctilus cast his great ritual, the magic on the wind was drawn into his spell, producing an eldritch storm that rose in a mind-shattering crescendo. There was a single deafening, blinding crash of thunder, lightning, loud enough to wake even Emperor Karl Franz in the Palace of Altdorf. When the echoes faded, neither castle, nor crag, nor the dead that dwelt within them could be seen. The manic laughter of the triumphant Nikolaus von Karstein echoed within the boom and the crash of the tempest, for his ritual has succeeded. His castle, proud as a conqueror's statue atop its dark and jagged crag, now jutted from the bone-choked morass of the galleon's graveyard. Glutted upon raw power, the vampire drew unto him the shattered remains of the dead warships scattered around, clothing the rough stone of his crag with the rotting timbers of once great galleons, until his castle sat at the crest of a composite sea hulk. To commemorate his newfound freedom, he took a new name, Count Noctilus, Master of the Bloody Reaver. The raw power flowing around the galleon's graveyard gave him an incredible level of necromantic control over its denizens. For given even enough power, a vampire can control anything that has passed beyond the veil of death. Noctilus bent the Shade Wraith to his will in a single night, forcing its captain, Vangeist, to obey his commands, and made unholy pacts with the master of the Black Kraken. Soon, Count Noctilus had his own empire, a dark realm that grew in power with every passing night. The creature that had called itself Nikolaus von Karstein was gone forever. His short-sighted brethren could keep their dismal province, for Count Noctilus had a far grander aim, to claim the great ocean for his own, and drown the mortal world in a tide of death. There's another little portion here about the Bloody Reaver, so let's read that as well. The Bloody Reaver is both a seagoing vessel and a solid and foreboding cliff crested by an ancient Sylvanian castle. Its stony foundation is clustered with the remnants of rotting galleons, melded with eldritch power into one grotesque whole. Teeming across the Bloody Reaver's slanted decks are the thousands of undead servants, ripped from their graves in the vampire's ritual translocation. Every night, the bloated corpses of the drowned are summoned out of the ocean to further bolster the crew of the composite hulk. Many a broadside has slammed home against the Bloody Reaver, only to find the wreckage of ancient ships miraculously drawn in unto it, shoring up its shattered architecture with scaffold and timber as if the warship were being refashioned by invisible giants. From the battlements of the citadel atop its crags, Count Noctilus sends swarms of vampiric hellfish, skeletal sea giants, hydras of sea-stained bone, and worse to assail his enemies. Truly, the Bloody Reaver is a nightmare made real, for once its black work is done, it vanishes like the morning mist. Ooh, spooky! So, there are some special rules here. The Bloody Reaver has a regenerating hull. Count Noctilus himself has control of sea monsters. So that's going to play very heavily into what we're about to talk about with the Curse of the Vampire Coast and how it actually translates these traits of being able to kind of constantly regenerate himself, as well as his crew, his ship, those things around him that have crossed past the veil of death, and also his mastery and control of even large creatures like sea monsters. So let's take a look at the actual the Academy post from Total War and get a really good idea of what's going on here. It's like we said, right? Count Noctilus, here he is in all of his glory. I mean, he just looks badass. He kind of looks like a cross between Davy Jones and Captain Barbossa in the coolest way possible. And I'm going to keep making parallels to the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and you guys are just going to have to deal with it. Yes, Keira Knightley. So, Count Noctilus here, I mean, it talks about him and talks about this little backstory here. We've got that this is the same symbol we see on the ship, on the flag of the Bloody Reaver. So all these things are really awesome here, right? So Count Noctilus' appetite for conquest allows him to gain war declaration missions with unique rewards and rapidly swell his ranks. So this kind of reflects that whole need to kind of grow his empire. And he also gets reduced recruitment duration for Necrofex Colossi. So we already saw that he gets a command of the large creatures of the undeath. And we're going to find out more about this as we go through this list here. Again, reduced upkeep for the Necroth Colossus. In addition, increased weapon strength for any monstrous unit under his command. We see this again, this repeating motif that mirrors what we already know about him from the lore. He does have this level of control. His mount is a Necrofex Colossus, so holy hot covered shit. Now remember we talked about that moon dial? Captain Roth's moon dial is his enchanted item. This strange trinket grants Count Noctilus increased movement and line of sight in the campaign map, as well as the ability to summon zombie deckhands across the battlefield. So, this then implies that he has come back from the dead, or the immortal undeath, I guess you could say, even after Captain Roth has sacrificed himself to kill him. So that kind of places him in a specific spot in the lore. So, we know that Finubar's son is the elf captain that helps out Captain Roth, so this can't be too far away from our current timeline anyway. So we have a really good idea of what's going on here. So he increases the Lord recruitment rank faction-wide, which is pretty cool. You get nice vampire generals, a little bit faster is probably what it's going to be like. Actually, that might be, I think that was for Harkin, right? But who cares? Moving on. So regenerative hull. This is exactly the name of the rule in Dreadfleet. Count Noctilus' preternatural powers of regeneration extend beyond merely himself, increasing the replenishment rate and recruitment capacity of his army. So we see this represented directly into the game, straight out of the lore, which is just an amazing, cool justice. I love when that happens. We get an increase to plundering here as he is, going from port to port like a dirty sailor, plundering his gold and everything like that, income gained from raiding and sacking settlements of the von Karstein line. We get that really cool nod to him being, very durable and ability to strike a lot of fear. So, regenerating in the face of seemingly insurmountable injuries and striking terror into the hearts of. So, probably look at this as some sort of maybe his units cause terror, or maybe his units cause better fear, or maybe there's a stacking a penalty to leadership, in addition to having him actually regenerate. The Sea Curse. The curse of the Galleon's graveyard is known and feared throughout the coast. Count Noctilus has found a way to harness his power into his own gain, increasing the leadership and melee defense of his depth guard, deck troopers, or deck droppers, and terrorgeists. Again, terrorgeists. Boom. Large creatures. And sorry, my allergies almost killed me right there. Then Invincible Fleet, so that we get a little bit more increase to leadership for his army, and Noctilus himself is unbreakable. So awesome. Awesome. I can't tell who I want to play first. I mean, Aranessa Saltspite doesn't really interest me. We'll see what she is. Luther Harkin's kind of cool, but I think Noctilus is just so much fucking cooler. I mean, he's got a chin dildo, so that he's got that going on. And I love this deep, red and black eye kind of vampire motif. I hope she doesn't have those. I'm just gonna be honest, guys, I hope she's not a vampire. If she is, I'll deal with it. I deal with all that shit. It's all cool to me, but I hope she isn't. Moving back to Noctilus, though. Got ahead of myself. And we see, of course, that he starts in the Galleon's graveyard. And we also saw, and we're going to overlay a map here that's going to show you guys both starting locations in a little bit, but then we see the Bloody Reaver, the exact model, straight out of Dreadfleet. Carbon copy right there. So we now have two lords. We have Noctilus, we have Luther Harkin, we have those starting locations of both, and they start pretty close to each other. So time will only tell. If you're seeing this video, I guess Thursday, I said tomorrow almost, then Aranessa Saltspite will be out, and I will have a video up shortly corresponding to her release, her lore, her story, as well as how it coincides with her campaign effects and special rules. I hope you guys enjoyed this video here today. This gave you a better idea of what Dreadfleet is about, what Captain Noctilus or Count Noctilus is about, and how Noctilus and Aranessa kind of play into this grand role with one another. I'm hoping that, just like Ark in the Black, Aranessa is kind of against, especially Noctilus, and that's her kind of objective, is to derail and destroy him. So I'm really excited to see what we get revealed with Aranessa here, guys. But stay tuned. We'll have another one of these coming out here very soon for Aranessa Saltspite. But as always, guys, don't forget to comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are on Noctilus, what you think Aranessa might be like, or what you think that fourth word's going to be like, huh? Do you think it's going to be that Skaven? I think that'd be so funny. But as always, guys, have a good one and take care.